이제 여러분들이 가보시게 될 곳은 유럽에서 가장 아름다운 도시로 손꼽히는 곳입니다. 곳곳에 역사와 이야기들이 어려 있으며 늘 위대한 작곡가들의 음악이 흐르고 있는 곳이죠. 이곳에서 우리는 모차르트와 바흐, 베토벤, 그리고 비발디, 차이콥스키 등 수많은 음악가들을 만나게 될 것입니다.
Hello, I'm Simon Callow, and I'm inviting you to join me on a musical and scenic journey to some of Europe's most beautiful places. We'll be following in the footsteps of the great classical composers, exploring their worlds, rediscovering their music. In fact, here today, I'm in the house of Jean Sibelius, our featured composer, the very place where he composed some of his most inspired music. But first, let's meet our other guides on the tour, who are just down the road in front of a rather famous landmark.
Welcome to Classical Destinations. I'm Matt Wills, and today we're in Helsinki, the capital of Finland.
Helsinki has a magical blend of art and nature, and we're going to have great fun exploring it, along with the music of Jean Sibelius.
핀란드의 인구는 약 520만 명으로 그중 20%가 헬싱키 근처에 삽니다. 핀란드는 거의 80%가 물이나 숲으로 덮여 있는 나라죠. 오늘 우리는 헬싱키에서 북쪽으로 날아가 라피주의 주도 로바니에미를 둘러본 다음 다시 아래로 내려와 얀 시벨리우스의 마을을 돌아볼 것입니다.
This is the Hotel Camp, quite a renowned institution in Helsinki. Completed in 1887, the Hotel Camp has a great many stories to tell, and Jean Sibelius was probably responsible for most of them.
지난 100년간 캠프 호텔의 운명과 핀란드의 운명은 아주 밀접하게 연결돼 있었습니다. 이 호텔 식당에서는 중요한 파티들이 열렸으며 또 신생국 핀란드의 국가 정체성의 틀이 잡혀갔죠. 또 이곳에서는 중요한 정치적인 문제가 결정됐으며 또 큰 거래가 이루어졌습니다. 캠프 호텔의 역사는 길고도 복잡합니다. 지난 세기 중반쯤 이곳은 거의 버려질 위기에 처했었죠. 하지만 지금의 주인의 지속적인 노력으로 많은 부분이 원래의 모습을 되찾게 되었습니다.
But an old building is just an old building without the history of the lives which passed through. One of those lives is that most famous of Finnish composers, Jean Sibelius.
요한 율리우스 크리스티안 시벨리우스는 1865년 12월 8일 헬싱키에서 약 100km 떨어져 있는 하멘린나에서 태어났습니다. 술을 좋아했던 아버지가 죽자 2살 난 시벨리우스와 누나, 또 다른 아기를 임신하고 있었던 어머니는 빚더미에 올라앉았죠. 그들은 남아있던 것을 챙겨 외할머니 집으로 가야 했습니다. 당시 핀란드는 러시아 제국에 속해 있었죠. 배운 자와 배우지 못한 자가 철저히 구분되었으며 대부분의 교육은 스웨덴 말로 이루어졌습니다. 하지만 변화의 바람이 불고 있었죠.
In 1873, the first Finnish language school opened its doors in his hometown, and in a moment of foresight, his mother enrolled him. Now, this was very important for young Sibelius because it opened up a whole new world of Finnish mythology to him, which fired his imagination and became foundational for much of his later work. About 30 years before Sibelius was born, a group of traditional Finnish folk songs and poems were gathered into one volume called the Kalevala. Now, the richness of this literature and its pathos were transformed by Sibelius into a 5-movement symphonic poem based on Kullervo.
자연을 사랑했던 시벨리우스는 상상력이 풍부했습니다. 하지만 활발하게 뛰어놀다가도 짙은 우울로 빠져드는 등 급작스럽게 기분이 변하곤 했죠. 따뜻한 성격의 소유자였던 그는 공부를 그렇게 잘하진 못했습니다. 하지만 음악에 대한 열정은 대단했으며 바이올린을 잘 켰죠. 1885년 학교를 졸업한 뒤 그는 헬싱키로 와 법을 공부하게 됩니다. 그리고 동시에 헬싱키 음악학교, 후에 시벨리우스 아카데미라 불리는 곳에 등록을 하게 되죠. 그는 점차 법률 공부에서 멀어지게 됩니다. 바이올린의 거장이 되길 꿈꾸었던 시벨리우스는 이곳에서 자신이 연주보다는 작곡에 소질이 있다는 사실을 알게 됩니다. 1889년 그의 첫 번째 걸작 현악 사중조 가단조가 발표되죠. 그는 베를린과 빈에서 계속 공부하며 교향시 쿨레르보의 초안을 만듭니다. 그리고 1892년 봄 이곳 헬싱키에서 첫 공연을 지휘하죠. 이것은 큰 성공을 거두게 됩니다. 드디어 작곡가로서의 삶이 시작된 것이죠.
Sibelius's music sounds as if it has been exhaled from the earth and blown directly into our ears from those ancient Finnish forests and frozen lakes. And people recognize his quality as soon as Sibelius burst onto the scene as a young man in the 1890s. He was absolutely the right person at the right time for the Finns, who after centuries of being in the middle of a territorial and cultural tug-of-war between the Russians and the Swedes, wanted their independence. They wanted to return to their own customs and speak their own language. Again, Sibelius became their standard-bearer, delving for inspiration into his country's vast and wide-ranging folk poetry, epic the Kalevala. Unlike his contemporaries, Vaughan Williams and Bela Bartok, he doesn't recycle folk music. Those dark, enraptured melodies and that otherworldly sound are all his own. Take a work like The Swan of Tuonela. Sibelius wrote it in 1893. Tuonela, according to Finnish legend, is the Isle of the Dead, surrounded by the dark waters of a lake on which floats a single swan. Cold, dark, misty, altogether bleak. Sibelius uses the cor anglais to be the swan. It makes a very good swan, too, gliding over the motionless waters. Time, even breath, is suspended. You get the impression that all rhythm has been removed from the music, leaving just mood. One doesn't expect much dancing, after all, on an island where everyone is dead.
1892년 6월 그는 아이노 야르네펠트와 결혼을 합니다. 이렇게 핀란드어를 사용하는 유명한 가문이 될 수 있었죠. 시벨리우스에겐 딸이 6이 있었습니다. 하지만 크리스티는 아기 때 죽었죠. 이런 시련과 경제적인 어려움에도 불구하고 아이노는 좋은 어머니가 되주었습니다. 시벨리우스의 손녀 사투 얄라스에겐 할아버지 할머니에 대한 좋은 추억이 많죠.
When we were child, he received us in the morning. He was still in bed after reading newspapers. We were perhaps outside, and then my grandmother called, "Now you can come and greet Grandpa." And then we came there and then, "Hello, how are you?" And then always, "What did you dream this night?" And then I said, "Perhaps some birds I saw." Where were these birds? Did they sing or did they fly? We had to, every detail we had to tell him. I played to him something. Sometimes he took my thumb, for instance, and just blew a little, and then he said, "What a tiny little finger, it must grow. You must go to Helmi and give some eat some food, that it becomes bigger." All his life he has walked so much in the forests. He was really very, very fond of nature. He needed and he listened to all the sounds, all the possible sounds and all the small details, and also the very big sea without shore and sky and colors. It is really, he had fantastic view of everything which surrounded him.
헬싱키는 따뜻한 느낌이 드는 도시입니다. 그렇게 크지 않아 오염과 교통체증 같은 건 문제가 없죠. 게다가 지역 문화를 잘 키워나가고 있습니다. 그리고 무엇보다 사람들이 친절하죠. 요즘은 고전음악이라는 말을 잘못 이해하고 있는 사람들이 많습니다. 그런 사람들은 고전음악은 아주 어려운 것이며 오늘날과는 단절된 과거의 전유물이라고 생각하고 있죠. 하지만 핀란드인들은 그렇게 생각하지 않습니다. 이곳에서 고전음악은 건강하게 살아있습니다. 라우타바라가 바로 그 증거죠. 그의 작품은 세계 곳곳에서 연주되며 위대한 음악이란 시간이라는 창을 통해 영원을 들여다보는 것이라는 믿음을 갖게 해줍니다. 이렇게 헬싱키에 있는 그의 집에서 음악에 대한 그의 생각을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Really, I think that even politicians and even businessmen consider music important. I think this too we have to thank Jean Sibelius for, because everybody knows how important his music has been in making Finland known internationally. He was extremely sensitive to criticism, and he still was criticized quite heavily till the very end, especially in Germany, in Sweden, and that his self-criticism was growing year after year until he burned it off, the score of his 8th Symphony, which was there already. And that must have been 1942, during the war. He burned it. That's what his widow told later.
Finland's a land of extremes. In summer, all around here, people are sunning themselves on harbour beaches. But even then, up north in Lapland, it can be snowing.
헬싱키에서 로바니에미로 가는 비행기를 타면 북쪽으로 700km를 날아가게 됩니다. 하루에도 여러 차례 비행기가 있죠. 이렇게 80분을 가면 우리가 아는 세상과는 전혀 다른 환상의 세계가 나옵니다. 이곳은 자연이 펼쳐놓은 아름다운 풍경과 경치로 가득하죠. 라플란드는 노르웨이와 스웨덴, 핀란드의 북부 지역을 가로질러 러시아까지 걸쳐 있습니다. 산타클로스 할아버지의 본부가 바로 이곳 라플란드 로바니에미에 있죠.
This cable above me marks the imaginary line which fills the heart with awe. This is the Arctic Circle, and everything north of this line in midsummer is bathed in perpetual daylight, while in midwinter there's no sun at all.
사미족은 이곳에서 몇백 년간을 살아왔습니다. 보통은 랩족이라고 부르지만 사미족 사람들은 이것을 경멸적인 의미로 받아들이죠. 라플란드 사람들은 바깥 활동을 즐깁니다. 모두들 땀을 흘리며 정열적으로 생활하죠. 이곳은 멋진 겨울 휴양지입니다. 순록공원을 구경할 수도 있고 용기 있는 사람들은 개썰매를 타볼 수도 있죠. 물론 말이 끄는 썰매를 타고 조용히 숲을 돌아볼 수도 있습니다. 또한 꽁꽁한 강 위에서 골프를 칠 수도 있죠. 그리고 믿기 힘드시겠지만 어떤 핀란드인들은 물놀이를 즐기기도 합니다.
When you just see the beauty of this place, it gives you a bit of an indication and understanding of how men like Sibelius and Rautavaara could be so inspired by the beauty of the Finnish countryside that surrounded them. From the time they were married in 1892, Aino and John Sibelius lived in about 10 different places in Helsinki and nearby Kerava, not to mention the summers spent with friends and John's long concert tours abroad. But friends began to urge John, for the sake of his music and most likely his health, to turn his back on the temptations of the city.
자연은 그의 작품에 굉장한 영향을 미쳤습니다. 그는 헬싱키에선 노래가 내 안에서 죽어버린다라고 했죠. 1904년 그의 가족은 헬싱키 북쪽 야르벤파로 이사를 합니다. 이 집은 그의 아내 이름을 따 아이놀라라고 부릅니다. 이 집의 많은 부분은 아이노가 직접 설계한 것이죠. 사우나 목욕탕 역시 아이노가 설계한 것입니다. 이 그림은 1880년대 그려진 아이노의 초상화입니다. 약혼하기 전 오빠가 그린 것이죠. 이 꽃병은 시벨리우스의 막내딸 하이디가 만든 것입니다. 하이디는 뛰어난 도자기 공예가로 파리 세계 박람회에서 동메달을 받았죠.
John and Aino's eldest daughter Eva said of her childhood here, "When we children were small, it seemed to us that our home, Ainola, was like a ship on the wide seas, and nothing was safe or certain outside it."
에바가 말했던 것처럼 그 당시 바깥 세상은 정말 안전하지 않았습니다. 핀란드는 러시아 황제가 다스리는 대공국이었죠. 하지만 1899년 저항과 대변동의 시기가 시작됩니다. 그것은 1917년 독립선언으로 절정에 달하죠. 같은 해 러시아에선 혁명이 일어납니다. 독립은 점진적으로 이루어졌습니다. 1906년 핀란드는 모든 국민이 참여한 선거로 국회를 구성하게 되죠. 이렇게 핀란드 여성들은 세계에서 처음으로 완전한 참정권을 가지게 됩니다.
The big tune towards the end of Finlandia is one of the most famous in all classical music. It's big enough to have roused a whole people, to have embodied their aspirations, to have defined their determination. It was for them what Churchill's rhetoric was for Britain during World War II. Its scope is bigger than the sense of individual heroism that you get, say, in Puccini's Nessun Dorma from Turandot. And I dare say it's even bigger than the expression of national pride you find in something like Elgar's Land of Hope and Glory. In my part of the world, there's pressure inside it. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. The Finns needed this music, and Sibelius was its conduit. You probably have to be Finnish to appreciate just how much Finlandia must have meant 100 years ago when Sibelius wrote it. It became almost de facto the Finnish national anthem during their push for independence. In fact, it bothered the Russians so much that they banned it from public performance. Fancy a nice tune like that being considered so dangerous. It must have helped, though, because the Finns won. The moral of the tale, with apologies to Noel Coward, is that it's strange how potent the people's music can be. Though Sibelius was rather surprised. He thought Finlandia was pretty insignificant, which only proves how hard it is to judge one's own work.
Enola was a place of tranquility and creativity for Sibelius, and most of his works were written here. And this dining room would have seen some interesting discussions. I can imagine one of his daughters asking him, "Papa, if your name's Johann, why does everyone call you Jean?"
Sibelius's uncle Johann had died about a year before young Johann was born, and one day the small boy was playing with some things that his uncle had left behind, and he found a small pack of calling cards, business cards we call them today. Now his uncle was a sailor and travelled widely, and so he used the French version of his name, Jean. Sibelius kept the cards and brought them out 20 years later, introducing them as his own, with the name Jean Sibelius on them, and it stuck.
1908년은 시벨리우스에게 힘든 한 해였습니다. 그는 자주 아팠고 우울해했죠. 의사는 그의 목에서 악성 종양을 찾아냈습니다. 다행히 수술이 성공해 종양은 무사히 제거됐지만 그는 담배와 술을 끊어야 했죠.
Sibelius loved listening to records, particularly of his own music, and when he did so with the volume turned right up, and sometimes he'd even press his ear against the loudspeaker to hear better. But that was pretty well the only sound that was allowed in the house. Silence was the element in which he had to compose. He wouldn't allow even plumbing because it might interfere with his concentration. He said, "Silence is speaking." The only sound, in fact, that you could hear is the same sound you can hear today, which is that of the wind soughing through the trees, a sound which permeates so much of Sibelius's music.
Sibelius was afraid of cancer and of dying, and this was reflected in his music. His Fourth Symphony was dark and brooding, full of depression, and it received a lot of negative criticism. He had a friend and patron at the time by the name of Axel Karpelan, who championed his cause and was the first to speak publicly in understanding of the difficult language of the Fourth Symphony.
카펠랑은 시벨리우스를 경제적인 위기에서 구해주기도 했습니다. 1919년 그가 죽자 시벨리우스는 일기에 이렇게 썼죠. 이제 누구를 위해 작곡을 한단 말인가. 시벨리우스는 1915년 50회 생일을 맞아 제5교향곡의 초연을 지휘했습니다. 그리고는 얼마 뒤 러시아 혁명으로 인해 야기되는 긴장을 피해 핀란드를 떠났죠.
Jean Sibelius's last published work was written in 1926. Then he effectively retired. In 1935, on the occasion of his 70th birthday, he made his last public appearance, and 7,000 guests, including 3 former presidents of the country, attended a concert in his honor. He lived to be 91. Some of his doctors might have been surprised to hear it, but as Jean said, "All of the doctors who told me not to smoke and not to drink have all died long ago, but I'm still living." In September 1957, he walked out into these woods and looked up to see a wedge of cranes flying south. He said, "Here they come, the birds of my youth." On the 20th of that month, he died of a cerebral hemorrhage here at Inola. At the very same time, Malcolm Sargent was conducting his Fifth Symphony at the University Assembly Hall in Helsinki.
Sibelius was buried right here by his family. And after the death of her beloved Jean, Ino stayed on here at Inola until her own death in June 1969.
It's an astonishing thing to do what Sibelius did when he wrote Finlandia, to embody the soul and the heart of a whole people. That's who Sibelius was when he wrote it. Just a few years after that beautiful portrait was painted, showing him for the passionate, tempestuous, fiercely concentrated genius that he was. And his people knew it. He's still their hero, their champion. 6,000 people a month come to visit this house, this symphony of wood, as Sibelius so beautifully called it.
이곳 헬싱키 대성당에서 거행된 그의 장례식에는 17,000명의 사람들이 그의 명복을 빌기 위해 왔습니다.
For such a small country, the experience has been just amazing.
Yes, and I'm so excited about our next episode because we're heading to St. Petersburg.
Tchaikovsky, Borodin, Rimsky-Korsakov, the list goes on, not to mention the art.
Absolutely.
So keep your bags packed and ready for our next classical destination. I'm Simon Callow. Goodbye from me, from Matt, and from Nikki.